On March 11, 2011, a routine Friday became the deadliest day in modern Japan. But the earthquake was only the beginning. A tsunami sent a giant wall of water racing towards the coast. Then, a sudden explosion. Something that should not have happened. From that moment, the disaster threatened not just Japan, but the entire world. In the aftermath, a grim fact emerged in this part of Japan. At that moment in time, there were not enough living to take care of the dead. The first warning signs appeared 2 days earlier, on March 9th. A 7.2 magnitude earthquake struck off the coast, shaking buildings and briefly alarming residents. It was powerful, but not unusual for a country accustomed to tremors. 3 more earthquakes followed in the same area that day, but life quickly returned to normal. No one knew this was the Earth's first whisper before the roar. Section 1. The Warning System. On Friday, March 11th, at 2:45 p.m., Japan's sophisticated earthquake early warning system detected the initial waves through over 1,000 seismometers. An emergency warning flashed across the country. High-speed trains came to a halt. Factory assembly lines went silent. Children in schools were instructed to take cover. The system worked, buying precious seconds. But only when the ground began its violent, unending trembling did people realize something was terribly wrong. By then, it was already too late. At 2:46 p.m., a 9.0 to 9.1 magnitude underwater megathrust earthquake occurred in the northwestern Pacific Ocean. The epicenter was just 45 miles east of the Oshika Peninsula at a shallow depth of 18 miles. For 6 endless minutes, the Earth did not stop. In Kurihara City, closest to the epicenter, the shaking was catastrophic. Hundreds of miles away in Tokyo, high-rises swayed for minutes on end. The force was so immense, it caused the Earth to wobble on its axis and physically shoved Japan's main island, Honshu, 7.9 feet to the east. The seafloor itself was thrust upwards, pushing a colossal wall of water out of its way. This was the super earthquake, and there was nowhere to hide. Section 3. The Underestimation. Minutes after the earthquake, at 2:49 p.m., the Japan Meteorological Agency issued its first tsunami warnings. Initially, the estimated wave heights were a daunting 20 feet. But a GPS buoy off the coast soon detected a terrifying truth. The sea level was rising far faster and far higher than anyone had imagined. The agency scrambled to issue a second warning, upgrading the tsunami heights to over 33 feet for some areas. But in the country lined with massive seawalls, many people, conditioned by years of drills where the real danger never came, hesitated. The system designed to save them had offered a false sense of security. Section 4. The Black Wall. The real disaster was awakening. Just 30 minutes after the quake, a black wall of water, moving at the speed of a jetliner, slammed into Japan's coastline. This wasn't a wave. It was a liquid mountain, churning with the debris of houses, cars, and boats. At Kamaishi, the water reached nearly 131 feet high, the highest tsunami wave ever recorded in Japan, wiping out everything in its path. Live television captured the horror as a dark line on the horizon grew, swallowing farmland, then homes, then entire city blocks. In the city of Natori, the wave flooded the airport tarmac, tossing airplanes around like bath toys. For the people on the ground, there was simply no time. Section 5. No place to hide. At the Noeru school building, about 200 teachers, children, and parents were sheltering from the earthquake.
The teachers were like, let's go check the classrooms to make sure everyone's okay and start getting everyone to the gym.
Tsunami is coming! The principal ordered everyone back inside, but it was too late. The tsunami tore through the school like a raging beast. One teacher,
like,
David Shump, risked his
school.
life pulling children and adults from the chaos, grabbing them from the torrent and heaving them towards safety. Of the 108 people at the school that day, 74 children and staff were killed. Across a 420-mile stretch of coast, the devastation was absolute.
Like one of my kids,
When the floodwaters began to recede,
struggling, so
they moved
I grabbed
with
him, I
almost
grabbed his
the
shirt.
same
I was
force,
able to, pull him
dragging debris, vehicles, and the bodies of victims back into the ocean. By the end of the day, more than 18,000 people had lost their lives, and several thousand were never found. The aftermath was unbearable. Entire towns had vanished, replaced by silence and debris. Two sons combing through the wreckage found their mother inside her car, lifeless, beside their niece and nephew. Morgues were completely full. The devastating tsunami did not stop at Japan's shores. It raced across the Pacific, striking Hawaii, Alaska, and California, where it tore apart harbors and sank boats. 18 hours later, it even reached Antarctica, breaking off part of an ice shelf. But while the world tried to comprehend the scale of the catastrophe, a more deadly crisis was unfolding.
Section 7. The Nuclear Countdown. At the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, the earthquake had knocked out the main power supply. The reactors automatically switched to emergency diesel generators to keep the cooling systems running. Inside the plant, engineer Atsufumi Yoshizawa felt the situation was under control. He had no idea that in just 55 minutes it would turn into a full-scale catastrophe. A 49-foot-high tsunami wave struck the Fukushima coast, towering over the plant's 19-foot seawall and overwhelming everything. The wave flooded the basement, destroying the diesel generators. The facility was plunged into darkness. Cooling stopped, and the temperature inside the reactors began to rise rapidly. The station was on the verge of disaster. A nuclear emergency was declared, and the countdown had begun. Section 8. A two-front war. As radiation levels spiked, the government ordered frantic evacuations, eventually creating a 12-mile exclusion zone. But the nightmare continued. Despite desperate attempts to vent pressure, the reactor cores heated to critical levels. On March 12th, a hydrogen explosion ripped through the Unit 1 reactor building. On March 14th, Unit 3 exploded with even greater force. The core of Unit 2 suffered a partial meltdown, and on March 15th, a fire broke out in the spent fuel storage of Unit 4. Radioactive particles were being released into the atmosphere. Most workers were evacuated, but a small group of men, later known as the Fukushima 50, stayed behind. They were ordinary engineers, technicians, and operators who refused to leave, tasked with stabilizing the reactors and containing the radiation at any cost. One of them, Atsufumi Yoshizawa, and his colleagues worked for an entire month under deadly conditions to bring the station under control. Section 9. The world changed. More than a decade later, the fallout from that day remains. More than 100,000 people are still displaced from their homes. For some, the search never ended. Mio Kimura's wife, father, and 7-year-old daughter Yuna were swept away by the waves. Years later, Yuna is the only person from their town whose remains have never been found. The Fukushima disaster became the costliest nuclear accident in history, exposing shocking flaws and forcing a global rethinking of nuclear power. In Japan, public trust was shattered, and within about 14 months, every single one of the nation's reactors had been shut down for safety reviews. The cleanup of Fukushima is a monumental task, expected to last until at least the early 2050s. Conclusion. The 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami was the most expensive natural disaster in human history. Nearly 20,000 lives were lost, and more than 120,000 buildings were reduced to rubble. It was a day when the awesome power of nature crashed into the awesome power of the atom, leaving a scar not only on Japan's land, but on the world's collective memory. It's a story of failure and destruction, but also one of incredible heroism and resilience. It's a reminder of a day a nation was brought to its knees, but refused to be broken. Contact action. For more documentaries that explore the monumental events that have shaped our world, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And don't miss our next video, where we dive into the most audacious engineering projects ever attempted.